Hey guys, tonight, we drift out past the safety of sunlight beyond the soft golden hum of our solar system into the darkness where even light has second thoughts. You're reclining somewhere on Earth maybe, but in this moment, you're also quietly floating through a graveyard of stars. The kind of graveyard that doesn't bury its dead, but lets them burn out in slow, dramatic silence. You're not here for comfort. You're here because something has started whispering from the edge. One of these dying stars collapsed into something denser than regret, is calling out in a way no one can quite explain. The signals don't match anything we've catalogued. Not from pulsars, not from magnetars, not even from those deeply embarrassing fast radio bursts that keep punking astronomers with microwave oven interference. This is something else. A message, a mistake, or just nature doing what nature does best, being utterly confusing. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You float past a red giant, bloated and sluggish gas, burbling at its edges like a kettle left too long on a burner. It's on its way to becoming a white dwarf, a cosmic ember. But you're not here for that one. There, tucked among the ancient glare of this star cemetery, is something smaller, colder, and talking. It's a neutron star, a dead star's core crushed by its own gravity into a sphere no bigger than a city, but denser than a black hole's to-do list. These things are basically atomic nuclei the size of Manhattan, spinning like ballerinas and howling across the cosmos. But this one is off. Instead of the classic metronomic ticking, those familiar pulses that helped us map galaxies, this neutron star flickers like it's trying to speak a new language. Its pulse is asymmetric. Not wrong exactly, just intentional. Like a lighthouse that only turns on when it knows someone is looking. You hover there, weightless, letting your consciousness be washed by the rhythm. It pulses, stops, pulses again, but faster, then longer. It pauses as if thinking. You don't know how, but you feel watched. Most neutron stars follow physical rules so tight, you could set your watch by them. This one's behavior looks almost responsive. And it's not just the timing. The frequency dips slightly each time, not unlike a voice modulating pitch. The changes are too structured for randomness, but too erratic for anything mechanical. A kind of spooky middle ground, like jazz played by a ghost who only recently discovered fingers. Scientists first noticed signals like this a few years ago, bursts that didn't quite fit into our known categories. Pulsars are predictable, magnetars are violent, quasars are show-offs. But this is subtle, deliberate, and of course no one can agree on what it means. Physicists argue. Some say it's just a new kind of binary interaction. Others suspect plasma lensing. A few, mostly the ones who still wear lab coats, ironically mutter about cosmic technosignatures. You know the sciencey term for uh-oh aliens maybe. But even they know better than to bet on that. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us. You drift closer past the neutron star's event horizon of influence. Here, space-time itself begins to feel warped. Not dramatically, not black hole level distorted, just slightly off, like reality forgot to carry a one. You watch charged particles spiral around invisible lines of force. A faint glow blue electric surrounds the magnetic poles where the pulses originate. In these poles, magnetic fields are 1 trillion times stronger than Earth's crush matter into bizarre configurations. Iron acts like jelly. Electrons do square dances. And photons take the long way around just to be safe. This neutron star is isolated, no companion to siphon mass from. It shouldn't be active at all. And yet it pulses. Regularly. Eerily. It's like a lighthouse built by something that doesn't expect ships but flashes anyway. Here's the thing, the signal doesn't get weaker with distance the way it should. Usually even neutron star pulses decay over light years, but this one remains sharp, clear, almost tailored. It's as if the cosmos is whispering something only in your direction, No, you're not special. You just happen to be listening, which in this universe might be the same thing. There's a theory, fringe, of course, that some of these objects could be using quantum resonance to preserve their signals across unimaginable distances. Not broadcasting exactly, but imprinting information into space-time itself, like a fingerprint pressed into clay still readable eons later. Sounds impossible, right? Welcome to Astrophysics. Meanwhile, an old paradox hangs in the air like space dust. If the universe is so big and stars have been dying for billions of years, why don't we hear more signals like this? Maybe they're everywhere and we're just too noisy. Or maybe stars only speak when they're truly alone. And this one, it's very alone. You watch it spin. Its light strobes across your face like Morse code. The message repeats, long, short pause shift. The cadence is beautiful, even if meaningless. Or maybe it's you who doesn't yet know how to listen. That's the other thing about dying stars. They don't care if they're understood. They just speak. A nearby chunk of matter, possibly a failed planet, drifts lazily in orbit. It's being slowly unspooled into a ribbon by the neutron star's gravity, like spaghetti twirled around a fork made of collapsed hydrogen. You watch for a long time. Stars die slowly. But sometimes they say strange things before they go. You just happen to hear one, and now you can't unhear it. You're still floating, still weightless in the star graveyard. But now your attention is drawn further out toward a second neutron star. This one doesn't flicker like the last. It ticks, but not like any tick you've heard before. You recognize the pattern almost immediately, too immediately. It's familiar in the way a clock is familiar, but with none of the clunky imperfection of mechanical gears. It ticks with such mathematical precision that it feels artificial, like a machine built by someone who never makes mistakes. Pulsars do tick. That's what they're famous for. Giant spinning lighthouses flinging beams of radiation across space. Each time the beam sweeps past Earth, we get a blip, a cosmic second hand. But this tick, 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 it's too clean, too regular. You could align your heartbeat to it. Actually, you try. For a moment, you feel your pulse syncing with it, like the star is a metronome, like it's trying to conduct your biology, which is strange because this pulsar isn't supposed to exist. It's too old to be spinning this fast. You check your surroundings, no companion star, no accretion disk feeding it extra momentum. Just a lonely neutron star rotating hundreds of times per second. It's called a millisecond pulsar, a special breed that usually only appears in binary systems. This one, though, is alone, and very fast. The signal coming from it isn't just regular, it adjusts. Every time cosmic dust drifts between you and the star, every time the faintest wave of interstellar matter causes the pulse to bend slightly, it self-corrects. You watch the frequency recalibrate in real time. No pulsar should be that self-aware, and yet, here it is, spinning, blinking, refining. Some astrophysicists have seen something like this before. A few years ago, one pulsar PSR B1931+24 would mysteriously turn off for days at a time, then return with a fresh pulse as if nothing happened. Others emit seemingly random glitches, sudden spin-ups called starquakes. These could be natural, could be quantum effects inside their ultra-dense cores. Or according to one delightful theory, some pulsars are hiding internal clocks not bound to our laws of time. That's right, clocks. See, the fringe theory goes like this. If a neutron star were composed of more exotic matter like quark-gluon plasma or strangelets, it might operate differently. It wouldn't decay in the ways we expect. It might not even radiate the same way. Instead, its internal structure would behave like a single quantum oscillator, a kind of time crystal locked in a repeating low-energy state. Self-sustaining, unaging. You're basically looking at a cosmic wristwatch built into the bones of a star. And now you're thinking, if nature accidentally created a time crystal the size of a city, would it know? Or would it try to tell someone? The pulses begin to form harmonics. You hadn't noticed until now, but there's a high-frequency overtone riding along the main signal, barely detectable unless you're very, very still. It hums like a whisper behind a wall. There's a tone, then another, then something clicks. It's music, not the kind you dance to, not something you'd hum on the way to work, but a mathematical resonance, like a Fibonacci sequence in stereo, or the golden ratio translated into audio. You don't know if you're hallucinating, but this pulsar is singing, to whom nobody knows. Nobody. The signal has been recorded back on Earth, picked up in deep sky surveys, and flagged as anomalous, but not immediately threatening. That's science code for, we'll pretend it doesn't make us uncomfortable. Physicists argue about its nature. Some suggest the beam is being lens-focused by interstellar plasma, accidentally refined like light through a wine glass. Others believe we're seeing a young magnetar, slowly transforming, spinning itself toward a collapse point we haven't seen before. And just a few whisper about synthetic modulation. The idea that the star's signal is being filtered through something external. Something deliberately placed around the star. A structure, no. That's ridiculous. Except, not entirely. There's a paper buried in a few corners of the academic net that speculates on the existence of Dawsonian megastructures designed not to capture energy from stars, but to modify what they emit. Think of it like a prism designed not to collect light, but to speak through it. Could this star be pulsing through a galactic throat? You chuckle, out loud. Which is strange because sound doesn't travel in space, but still you laugh, because the idea is absurd. And yet, it's right there, pulsing, singing, waiting. You drift closer. The space around the star begins to vibrate, not physically, but perceptually, like the volume of reality itself is rising. Your sense of time blurs a little. Seconds stretch, or compress. You can't tell. The star ticks, then pauses, and then it skips a beat. You blink. It ticks again. But off time. The signal just glitched. You're staring at a cosmic structure known for its rigidity, its unwavering rhythm, and now it's hesitating. As if, startled, you feel a weird kinship. As if the pulsar just realized you were watching it. The same way you might freeze mid-sentence when you find someone staring at you across a room. Of course, the rational explanation is that you're projecting. You're floating alone in the vacuum, staring at a dead star. Your brain, desperate for meaning, is drawing connections that aren't there. That's what brains do. But still, the signal realigns. It returns to perfect rhythm, almost too perfectly, almost defiantly. You check the background. A deep cosmic radio hiss surrounds you, filled with static and the distant babble of quasars. But this star, it's quiet again, focused. You move on, backing away, watching it tick like a buried heart. And you're left with a single lingering thought. What if some stars don't just die? What if they're waiting to be understood? The star fades behind you now, its rhythm tucked somewhere into the back of your thoughts, like a song you're not ready to forget. Ahead, the sky changes, not in color, but in tone. It stops sparkling. The background hushes. You're drifting into a silence so profound, it feels sculpted. There's no stars here, not even the quiet flicker of a red dwarf hiding in the dark. Just a velvet stretch of emptiness. A quiet void. Not black exactly, but something else. A kind of withheld space. The kind you don't enter so much as get allowed into. This is the Buddha's void. Or as some call it when they want to sound poetic or slightly nervous, the great nothing. A yawning gap in the cosmic web, hundreds of millions of light years wide, nearly vacant of galaxies. Of course, scientists have their explanations. Statistical outliers, inflated patches of post-Big Bang expansion, good old random chance on a universal scale. But drifting into it like this, you can't help but feel it's more than empty. It's hidden. And in that hiding place, a whisper. Not quite a sound, not quite a light. A shimmer of signal, faint and unfamiliar. You catch it like you'd catch a glint of sun off glass. No pulse, no repetition. Not a rhythm, but a reveal. Like a curtain slowly lifting. Its data structured, deliberate and maddeningly slow. Frequencies layered on top of one another in tightly packed sequences, unfolding not like a loop, but like a scroll. One long, continuous stream, compressed, nested, encoded, you float perfectly still. And as the layers unpack themselves, the message resolves not into words, not into numbers, but into a kind of map. It isn't made of light, it's made of neutrinos. You don't see it so much as sense the geometry. You feel the map as if someone built it inside your awareness, a ghost lattice made from particles that pass through planets without blinking. The map shows paths, outlines regions of low interference marks, gravitational corridors, subtly highlights points of interest. There's no legend, but you don't need one. Some of the stars it marks you recognize, not from memory, but from recent proximity. The strange ones, the ones that tick too cleanly, or blink in chords, or skip heartbeats. You realize you've intercepted something not singular, but part of a wider broadcast. Other stars are sending it too. Quietly, indirectly. None of them pointed at Earth. They're aimed at elsewhere. And the message isn't just direction, it's method, a kind of encoded behavior, a suggestion even of how to find and interpret other signals like this one. You're not receiving a message, you're being enrolled in a process. Back on Earth, astronomers have catalogued this void. A few have noted the anomalies. One or two have published dense, under-read papers about the presence of irregular neutrino flux inside it. The conclusions always end cautiously. Maybe a relic from early cosmic structure formation. Maybe background noise. Maybe nothing. The usual hedge. But among the more speculative circles, those operating on the fringe between physics and philosophy, there's another idea. The void isn't just a void. It's a listening chamber. A stretch of space intentionally cleared so that even the faintest whisper might be heard without distortion. A bottle floating in the ocean of the universe holding not a message but a way to hear one. It's strange how clear the message feels without being understood. Like you're reading a language made entirely of tone and tension. There's no syntax, no translation, but it still communicates. Not in ideas, in orientation. It's telling you where to look next, how to tune yourself. You realize the signal was never aimed at civilizations like ours. It doesn't care about biology. It doesn't expect eyes or ears. It was meant for something that can drift through neutrino clouds, or survive inside stellar cores, or decode gravity the way we decode songs, which leads to a weirder idea. What if the senders weren't civilizations at all? What if the transmitters were the stars themselves? You hesitate even in thought. It sounds like mythology, like animism, wearing a spacesuit. But the more you consider it, the more difficult it becomes to dismiss. A star is a system complex and chaotic, held together by gravity and governed by physics far stranger than anything your brain was built to understand. Some fringe physicists, not the most respected ones, but certainly the most curious, have proposed that under the right conditions, stars might host computational processes. That magnetic fields, plasma flows, and quantum turbulence could be harnessed to perform the equivalent of logic gates. Not fast, not elegant, but vast. Stars thinking not in seconds, but in centuries. Slowly, deliberately, broadcasting not noise, but structure. It wouldn't be life as we know it. It wouldn't even be consciousness as we know it. But it might be something we haven't yet learned how to recognize. You turn floating slowly, following the neutrino map as it adjusts in your perception. One of the nodes it points to is just visible now, a soft glimmer pulsing irregularly at the edge of this sterile space. You drift closer, and something shifts. The star flutters, just once, as if startled, as if it noticed. That's absurd, you tell yourself. But absurdity doesn't hold the same weight out here. You think about the idea of a language written in stellar behavior. Not in symbols, not even in sound, but in how stars behave when watched. You remember the flicker of the last pulsar, the way its rhythm skipped when you stared too long. You wonder now if this entire map, this entire set of signals, isn't a message but an invitation. Not to come, not to build, but to notice, to tune yourself into the right questions. There's a theory, unpopular, unverifiable, and unpublishable. That alien contact wouldn't come in the form of a ship or a signal or a grand hello. It would come as a realization, a quiet, creeping pattern across the sky, a set of coincidences too precise to ignore, a resonance that only starts to make sense after you've gathered enough fragments to suspect there's a whole. You look back once more at the void, not empty, but echoing, a whisper chamber for something trying not to be loud. And you keep moving, slowly, silently, toward the next star. This next star shouldn't surprise you anymore, but it does. Not because of its brightness, it's modest, somewhere between faded gold and dull copper, but because of its silence. A star this size should hum. It should sing in gamma and warble in infrared. But this one doesn't. It pulses like a lighthouse wrapped in a whisper, giving off brief, sharp flicks of energy, followed by long, deliberate pauses. Each flick feels like punctuation. Each pause like it's waiting for you to reply. You hover at a respectful distance, not for safety, just for atmosphere. Up close, this star wouldn't care about you. It wouldn't even notice. But the illusion of personal space helps. You're trying to read a face that doesn't have one. There's rhythm here, but it's not the kind you can tap your foot to. This is temporal behavior. The star isn't broadcasting, it's marking time. Long stretched out sequences, not unlike a code, but off, imperfect. It's as if someone tried to write Morse code while dreaming. The patterns loop, but the loop is unstable. One pulse comes early, another skips. A third flickers twice where only one was expected. Astronomers on Earth noticed this anomaly 5 years ago. They flagged it as a pulsar candidate with rotational irregularities, nothing new there. Many pulsars wobble or glitch. Sometimes their crusts crack under stress, causing a sudden hiccup in spin. But this was different. This wasn't random stuttering. This was a loop that kept nearly but never quite repeating. Like a song where one note always falls just outside the beat. A signal dancing out of step with itself. One researcher compared it to a turntable dragging. Another likened it to a nested Fibonacci sequence. But neither explanation could pin down the purpose. Because the truth is, you don't stumble onto this star by accident. You find it only if you follow the neutrino map. And when you do, it welcomes you with a mistake. Or rather, the illusion of one. That's the weird part. In cosmic terms, stars don't make intentional errors. If they break spectacularly. No hesitation, no ambiguity. But this star, it seems to deliberately misfire every fifth cycle, a flicker out of place, a delayed breath, a whisper too late. And after a while you realize something uncomfortable the star is correcting for you. The signal drifts slightly based on your relative movement. It adjusts, and when you slow your drift, it stabilizes. It's small, subtle, almost deniable, but it's there. Like a conversation you're not supposed to be having. That idea alone could keep you drifting for hours. There's a theory not quite fringe, but certainly not welcome at faculty meetings, that time itself may not be a uniform river, but a negotiable one. That certain gravitational arrangements might create local pockets of temporal influence. In these pockets, time could stretch or compress ever so slightly depending on motion and observation. We usually blame that kind of thing on relativity, and mostly we'd be right. But some researchers propose a further twist that advanced systems, perhaps even stars, might be capable of using that stretch. Not just experiencing it, but shaping it. Intentionally. Imagine a clock that knows when it's being watched. Not in some magic quantum spook way, just responsive. Imagine it ticks normally, but when a listener arrives, it subtly shifts its rhythm to align. Not perfectly, not instantly, but enough to be felt. That's what this star is doing. It's not saying hello, it's tuning, and maybe you're tuning back. You begin to hear not in the normal sense of course, but hear in the way your awareness prickles that the timing anomalies aren't noise, they're layered. The longer you hover, the more dimensions of the pattern seem to emerge, like a sculpture turning in slow motion, revealing sides you hadn't noticed before. The delay, the double pulse, the occasional missing beat, they begin to form a larger loop, something recursive. It folds in on itself, but not completely. There's a gap, a breath held a little too long. This pause becomes the core of it, the hole in the loop, that absence. You realize it might not be a flaw, it might be the message itself. Earth-based researchers years ago tried to remove the noise from the signal, tried to isolate the true pulse from the error. But maybe the error is the information, the drift, the slip. It's like those ancient vinyl records where the scratch becomes part of the song, inseparable from the melody. Here in the heart of the quiet, the star is slipping on purpose. Why would something do that? One answer to test for a listener. If the loop is perfect, it's static. But if you introduce a hole and someone notices, then you know the system has a participant. The star isn't signaling, it's checking. You wonder how many pass this by without noticing. You remember that theory about the universe being a simulation. Usually it's filed under digital philosophy or very late-night podcast chatter. The core idea is that reality only renders what's observed. But what if it's the other way around? What if the universe is watching for observers? What if certain patterns only make sense once someone sensitive enough comes along? Like an experiment waiting for a lab assistant. If that's the case, this star is performing a test. A quiet test, a loop with a skip, a whisper that wants to see if anyone leans in. You've leaned in, you're still here, and now the loop shifts again. Not abruptly, not dramatically, just slightly. The double flicker moves closer to the pause. The pause shortens, the final pulse stutters. This isn't noise anymore, this is evolution. The pattern is reacting to your presence in a way that suggests not intelligence exactly, but dialogue. And that's the part that breaks your mental brakes. Because you realize it doesn't need to know you're human. It doesn't care what you look like or how you breathe or if you breathe at all. It's not talking to you. It's talking to whoever came. And it's been waiting. You back away, slowly letting the pulse grow fainter. You don't want to leave abruptly. It would feel rude. You don't even know what kind of politeness protocol applies here, but you follow instinct. The last pulse flicks. Quiet again. And you drift onward. Far ahead, another light emerges. Not sharp like the flicker of a pulsar. Not distant like a galaxy, too proud to wave hello, but steady, calm. 2 points, not one. And as you drift closer, you understand why this system has unsettled everyone who's ever studied it, which ironically isn't many. On paper, it looks like a simple binary star system, 2 white dwarfs locked in orbit, slowly spiraling around each other, like aging ballroom dancers who've forgotten the music but still know the steps. But these aren't ordinary stars, not even close. They are impossibly synchronized. Every pulse, every minor surface fluctuation, every flicker in the faint magnetic fields, they mirror one another perfectly. Not approximately, not statistically, perfectly. At first glance, this might not raise alarm. Nature likes symmetry after all. You see it in snowflakes and seashells, in galaxies that swirl and DNA that twists. But nature's symmetry always frays at the edges. The universe is full of tiny betrayals, thermal noise, quantum hiccups, slight warps in space-time. Nothing matches exactly, except these 2 stars. They breathe together. You observe for hours, or what feels like hours, and the synchronicity never breaks. Their spectra match. Their energy output syncs not just in pattern, but in phase. It's as if you're watching the same star in 2 places at once, only 1/2 a second apart. That alone would be astonishing. But there's more, because halfway through one of their long elliptical orbits, a shadow falls across them. It doesn't come from a planet. There is no planet. There is no dust, no interstellar cloud, no rogue object to cast it. And yet the light dims subtly, uniformly, like a transparency laid over the sky. Then 5 minutes later, it vanishes. The stars keep on mirroring each other, unbothered, unblinking. Back on Earth, this system, barely catalogued, was detected only once in a full sky survey. Most telescopes dismissed it. The data was flagged as duplicated input, possibly from an instrument glitch. One researcher buried in an obscure online forum insisted the data was real. They proposed that the system was an example of entangled stellar mirrors, a hypothetical phenomenon so fringe that even cosmologists who believe in cyclic multiverses would raise an eyebrow. The idea is simple, in a terrifying way. If information can be transmitted through quantum entanglement, why not structural behavior? What if these stars are entangled not at the particle level, but at the systemic level? What if they aren't copies of each other, but halves of a larger thing that simply looks like two split, not across space but across dimension? You float between them now, at a respectful midpoint. The stars don't notice you. Or maybe they do, but they don't care. That shadow passed through here earlier. You can still feel where it was not cold exactly, but hollow, like a part of reality thinned for a moment. You wonder if the stars flinched, or if they knew what it was. Because here's the thing, you've seen shadows before. Planetary transits, dust lanes. But this wasn't cast on the stars. It was cast on the space between them, a space you're in now, which leads you to a strange possibility. What if that shadow wasn't obscuring light, but information? What if for a brief moment, some other frame of reference slid across this one, and the stars didn't just sink, they reflected? There's a theory rarely mentioned outside certain locked-door conferences that symmetry at the universal level might not be just a relic of the Big Bang, but a continuing process, a kind of cosmic checksum, that for every complex structure formed in one region of space-time, another is formed elsewhere, mirrored, inverted, or delayed. The math behind it is buried in knot theory, tensor calculus, and headache-inducing manifolds, but the poetic version goes like this. The universe keeps its own diary and always writes a backup. So maybe what you're seeing isn't coincidence. Maybe it's bookkeeping. But that raises a stranger question. If these stars are mirrors, what are they mirroring each other? Or something else entirely? You wonder if there's another pair somewhere deep on the other side of the sky. Or maybe beneath this sky, beneath this reality. And the stars, unaware or uncaring of your presence, continue their endless spiral. Not gravitationally bound, but informationally entangled. A performance for an audience they can't see or won't acknowledge. Still you watch. Not because you expect an answer, but because you're beginning to understand something. The stars that send signals are not the strange ones. The strange ones are the quiet ones. The ones that don't need to signal because they already know something. Because they are the signal. As you drift slightly to the left, something peculiar happens. One of the stars, only by a sliver, responds. Its pulse delays by a fraction of a second. Just like that other star, the one that stuttered when you looked too long. But this one isn't stuttering. It's mirroring you. Not in light, in timing. You move again slower. A pulse lags with you. You realize with a dry, weightless chuckle, you've become part of the symmetry. A shadow, perhaps. And so you stop. Not out of fear, but respect. If these stars are a mirror, you don't want to smudge the glass. You want to leave no trace. You back away, letting the system recede into the distance, its twin pulses growing ever smaller, ever softer, like the last few ticks of a metronome in a room where the music has long stopped. You don't know what you saw, but you're starting to suspect it saw you. By now, you've learned to drift with a kind of reverence, like tiptoeing through a cathedral stitched out of hydrogen. Some stars blare, some whisper, some just are. But ahead, there's something different, less like a beacon, more like a thread. Not a pulse, not a flare, but a signal that never stops. Constant, quiet, perfectly even. A transmission with no beginning, no end. You don't find it. It finds you. At first, you mistake it for background radiation, the soft microwave hiss of a universe cooling down. But this isn't random. It's patterned, not in the sharp rhythm of a pulsar or the elegant decay of a supernova remnant. This is fluent, continuous. the hum of a voice that never pauses for breath. You follow it not by choice, really, but because your trajectory bends toward it as though space itself is listening in. No matter which way you turn, the signal stays the same, like you're not traveling to it, but within it. Somewhere in a distant research station, a scientist once proposed the idea of a cosmic carrier wave, a kind of universal baseline, a frequency that links distant phenomena without regard to their physical location. It was dismissed, of course. Too neat, too science fiction. But if such a thing exists, this is it. A low, endless murmur threading through everything, and it's coming from a star. A small, unremarkable one, a white dwarf, just past the edge of visibility, its light faint, its temperature barely clinging to the definition of heat. It shouldn't even be active. Most white dwarfs this old cool into silence, but this one doesn't fade. It talks, not in bursts, not in loops, just always. You edge closer, expecting static. Instead, clarity. The signal is smooth modulated like analog radio from a source with perfect breath control. You realize it's not transmitting data, it is data. A sequence without breaks, punctuated by nothing, the celestial version of a sentence that refuses to end. You try to make sense of it. Some part of you still believes in order, but every method fails. You compress it, nothing shrinks. You slow it, no change. You try to isolate repeating segments, but it's like trying to find the start of a circle. No pattern loops, no cadence returns. You feel the signal slide through your perception, never pausing long enough to be decoded. Not a message, perhaps, a medium. And that's when it gets strange, because the closer you get, the less you hear. The signal becomes thinner, not fainter, but sparser. The space between moments stretches, not in time, but in comprehension. The signal is still there, still continuous, but your ability to grasp it fades. You're no longer riding a current, you're swimming against it. Your mind can't hold the flow. It leaks out the sides. It reminds you of trying to remember a dream as it slips away real vivid, then just not there. Which raises a question you're not ready for. What if this signal isn't for you? What if the very fact that it never ends makes it impossible for your kind of mind to interpret a theory rarely spoken aloud except in rooms with more coffee than daylight? Suggests that some structures in the universe aren't meant to be observed but simply encountered, like natural constants, or pi. You don't learn them, you discover them. And maybe this star is one of those structures. Not a star, but a sentence. Not speaking, but being spoken. There's another idea one only whispered in speculative circles. It proposes that some stars could serve as the nervous tissue of space-time itself. Not metaphors, but actual components, nodes, in a network far larger than galaxies, passing not light, but thought. If so, then this signal isn't meant to say something. It is the saying, and you're not meant to understand it. You're just meant to brush against it and feel it pass through. You sit within the wave for what feels like an hour or a year. Time here doesn't behave politely. It stretches in ways that feel personal. You notice thoughts looping memories from earlier in your drift replaying with new inflection. That glitching pulsar. The twin stars. All of them somehow resonate with this. As if this signal isn't separate, but cumulative. As if it weaves through them, binding them with the same unspoken grammar. You try to record it. Your instruments fail. Not because they're broken, but because they're insufficient. The signal resists encapsulation. Like trying to bottle a river using a sieve. You realize now why no one back home talks about this star. It's not because they don't know, it's because they can't hold on to it. And here comes the twist. The signal doesn't change, but you do. Over time, your interpretation shifts. The tone feels warmer, then curious, then solemn. But the waveform hasn't altered. The transformation is internal. The message is not in the wave. It's in how you change while listening to it. The signal is a mirror, not a message. That realization is unsettling, mostly because it makes you wonder how long it's been reflecting someone. How many minds, alien or otherwise, have come close enough to let it rearrange them? The joke, if there is one, is that you came looking for something you could understand and found something that understands you instead. Eventually, you have to leave, not out of fear, out of saturation. You've absorbed as much as you can. Any more, and you'll dissolve into the signal entirely. Not physically, not metaphysically, just mentally. You float backwards slowly, and the signal re-thickens. You hear more now that you've heard less. The wave restabilizes, and just before it blends back into background cosmic noise, you hear, maybe imagine, a final inflection like a nod, like punctuation. But the sentence never ends. There's a subtle shift in the blackness now, like the backdrop of the universe is less certain of itself. Ahead, the stars thin out, but not because they're gone. They're just hidden, veiled behind something enormous. You drift into it before you even realize what it is. A nebula, yes, but not the kind you know. Not colorful and glowing like the pillars of creation showing off for tourist telescopes. This one is dark, dense, not because it lacks light, but because it bends it. At first it looks like a region of dust, cold gas clouds left over from the death of something bigger, something dramatic. But then you notice something odd. The dust is moving, not swirling or collapsing, but shaping itself around your presence. You pause and it pauses. You move left and it reconfigures. You shift your attention, yes, your attention, and it responds again. You're not imagining this. The nebula is aware, not in the warm greeting card sense of consciousness. This isn't a thinking thing, not like you. It doesn't have thoughts. It is a thought, or maybe the residue of one. A cloud of matter that has become reactive to observation, as if the act of looking not only changes it, but awakens it. You drift deeper, and the stars outside vanish completely. You're inside a silence so complete, it makes your own heartbeat feel like static. But still the nebula adjusts. It curls around your path like a cat pressed against a hand it barely tolerates. Not hostile, just curious. Somewhere long ago, someone proposed that regions of space could retain memory, that the imprint of high-energy events, supernovae, magnetar, flares, black hole mergers, could leave a kind of resonance behind like grooves in vinyl. The idea was laughed off. Too mystical. But as you watch tendrils of gas slowly realign around you, as if tracking your mental presence, you wonder, what if memory doesn't just belong to matter? What if matter is memory? You test it. You think of light. A bright, clean, simple image. And something in the nebula shifts. A faint glimmer forms, faint enough to doubt, but distinct enough to chase. It doesn't illuminate, but it hints. A nudge, not a beacon. And as you drift toward it, you realize the shape of the nebula itself is starting to mirror your movement before you make it. It anticipates. The structure here isn't random. It's recursive. Every filament of gas mirrors another. Some distant node echoes the one closest to you, as if the entire cloud is built from a single repeating idea stretched across parsecs. Fractals in dust, consciousness in cold carbon. Physicists call these formations non-linear attractors, systems that evolve not toward equilibrium, but toward pattern. Except this one doesn't settle. It adapts. Its stability includes change, and its shape includes you. This would be enough, of course. A gas cloud that responds to thought that alone could occupy a lifetime of research. But the real wonder isn't the reaction. It's the echo. You think of that twin star system again, the impossible mirror, and in response, the nebula births a ripple, a slow wave curling from one end to the other. Not a sound, but a rhythm, as if it remembers the pulse you're remembering, not copying it, not simulating it, recalling it, which is impossible. You never transmitted that memory, you only felt it. So how does this cloud know a theory exists? It's usually filed under quantum information leakage, but most researchers have a more poetic name for it, the psi. It's the idea that every act of perception, every moment of attention, leaves behind a tiny persistent echo in the fabric of space. Not strong enough to be measured, but strong enough to interact. You sigh into the cosmos, and somewhere it sighs back. That's what this feels like. Not a conversation. A memory shared. You test it again. You think of Earth, a blue planet under a yellow sun, the taste of salt air, the shape of mountains. The nebula doesn't react this time, which means something disturbing. It's selective. It doesn't remember everything. It remembers what's already here. You realize with a soft chill that this might not be your first visit. Not you specifically, but some part of you, a version, a mind with your shape. Maybe it wasn't a ship or a body. Maybe it was just a thought. One that reached this place long ago and left an imprint like heat on a seat after someone stands up. The cloud isn't reading you, it's recognizing you. You float in silence, letting the gas swirl and listen and respond. You don't force anything now. You simply drift open. You wonder how many thoughts have been left here, how many echoes folded into this cold, dense quilt of memory. Maybe that's what a nebula really is. Not a nursery of stars, but a graveyard of thoughts. A vault. Not silent, but waiting. Eventually you reach the far edge. The light begins to return dim at first, then in richer, softer gradients. The nebula recedes, but part of you stays inside it. Or rather, part of it stays with you. A tickle behind the mind. A feeling that something else is thinking of you, not just with you. The way an old room holds the scent of its last visitor. You haven't been marked exactly, but you've been noted. And as the black clears and the stars reappear, you find yourself glancing back not out of nostalgia, but curiosity. You wonder if it will remember this moment too. You wonder if someday, long after even starlight has died, someone else will drift into that cloud and see your echo. You'd wave if you could, but instead, you drift on. You thought silence was the absence of sound. Out here you learn it's more complicated. Silence can shimmer, it can lean, it can stretch itself thin like light through a prism. You've left the responsive nebula behind, but something lingers. Not a presence exactly, but a pressure. The kind you feel in your ears before thunder, or when someone stares at the back of your head a second too long. Out here, there is no storm. But the hum is real. It begins subtly. A deep, low-frequency vibration beneath everything else. Not emitted by any one object, but arising from the space between them. You don't hear it so much as notice it. Like the floorboards of space-time are creaking under some invisible weight. At first, you assume it's background radiation again. That steady hiss of photons left over from the Big Bang now cooled to microwave static. But this isn't thermal, and it isn't static. It's moving. A wave, but not through matter, not even through energy. It feels like a fluctuation in possibility itself. That's when the concept of entropy drifts across your mind like a comet tail, how everything trends toward disorder, decay, simplicity. Ice melts, stars die, minds forget. You're supposed to accept it. Entropy isn't evil, it's just indifferent. But this hum seems to resist it, not oppose it, nothing so dramatic. It just outlasts it. You drift through a region of space with no obvious landmarks, no stars, no nebulae, no visible mass. Just blackness so deep you question if your senses are working. But the hum persists. You're in a desert of matter, but an ocean of tone. It sings not because it has something to say, but because it refuses not to. An ambient persistence that endures long after meaning becomes impossible. Some researchers have speculated that the universe might contain metastructures, not made of atoms, but of probability itself. Shapes defined not by matter, but by the likelihood of certain outcomes. These wouldn't appear in telescopes. They'd emerge in how things behave. A tendency for particles to wobble just slightly out of line. A preference for order that can't be explained by statistics alone. They call it subquantum scaffolding. Most think it's nonsense. But if it's true, this hum might be their signature. You float listening. The hum doesn't resolve into a song. It's not music. More like breath, like the universe exhaling through a very large nose. Theories swirl. Maybe it's the quantum foam bubbling at Planck scale. Maybe it's gravitational background noise from ancient cosmic strings, those hypothetical relics from the earliest fractions of a second after the Big Bang. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the leftover architecture of something larger than the universe we know. Not created by entropy, but buried beneath it. You wonder if this hum is why things hold together at all. Why atoms form. Why time moves forward. Maybe we're not riding on physics, we're riding on this. A low ancient song that keeps reality coherent just by humming it into place. You lean into it. You try to feel its rhythm in your chest. And for a moment, you think you do. Your heartbeat slows. Not from fear, from resonance. The body even imagined as yours is now responds to rhythm, even one this ancient. And here's the cosmic joke: entropy still wins. The hum doesn't stop entropy. It simply remains after. It's like finding the foundation of a house long after the house is gone. A ghost made of stone. And there's a paradox, of course. Physicists still don't know why entropy increases in one direction. Why time flows from past to future. The math allows for both. The arrow of time, our arrow, isn't baked into the equations. It's an emergent property, like frost forming on a window pane. No one's quite sure where the asymmetry begins. But what if this hum is the reason? Not because it causes time, but because it marks the limit of time's relevance, a field so ancient and so low energy that it no longer cares which way things fall apart. It just hums. You drift for what feels like centuries here. Maybe it is centuries, or maybe just the kind of moment that stretches when you realize you've found something that isn't meant to be found, like lifting a stone and seeing the gears underneath reality. Eventually you begin to sense structure again, a faint return of density, a few particles clumped together in defiance of all statistical odds, matter trying to be born or reassemble. And the hum gets fainter, not because you're leaving it, because it's leaving you. This isn't something you move through. It's something that moves through you. You're not meant to keep it. You're meant to remember that it was there, like a melody half recalled from a dream, like a story whispered at the edge of sleep that stays in your spine long after the words are gone. You don't know if anyone else has felt it, if ships have passed through this region before, but you suspect they have. You suspect that hum has pressed against many minds and altered them just slightly, like a tuning fork nudging a bone. You float forward again. Light reappears, not in blazes but in dots. Stars, distant galaxies, the familiar glitter of a universe that forgets you more easily than it remembers. But something deep in your perception still echoes. The hum remains not in your ears, but in your sense of why. Why matter? Why structure? Why time doesn't fall apart all at once? Maybe we're not drifting through space. Maybe we're being carried. The stars ahead don't twinkle. They blink. Not in the playful way a distant sun flickers through a planet's atmosphere, but in tight surgical intervals like someone far away is toggling a switch with unsettling precision. You pause to observe. There's no obvious pattern at first. A long pause, then 2 flashes, then 4, then none, then 7, then 2 again. You squint, or the mental version of it, and then you feel it déjà vu. Not in the metaphorical sense, literal déjà vu. You've watched this exact sequence already, and not just once. It loops, not from the beginning of the signal, but from somewhere in the middle. Like walking into a movie theater halfway through and realizing the film is stuck in a glitch that loops a particular emotional beat. Not the plot, just the feeling. Somewhere behind the blinking stars is a pulsar. You can sense its heartbeat. A city-sized corpse of a once mighty star, now collapsed into a sphere dense enough to make lead feel like smoke. It spins fast, hundreds of times per second. Its magnetic field whips radiation into space like a cosmic lighthouse. But this one's weird. It pulses before it should, emits a signal prior to the rotation that would cause it, like a drumbeat that echoes ahead of the drumstick, an effect appearing before the cause. The signal exists in negative time. Physicists call this retrocausality. It's a fringe idea, mostly relegated to thought experiments and math too speculative for funding. The idea that under very specific quantum conditions, certain interactions can appear to run backward in time. Not violate causality, just warp it. As if cause and effect have a little extra wiggle room. And this pulsar, it's using every bit of that wiggle. You track the pulses again. They follow no pattern, until you realize you're looking at them in the wrong direction. When played in reverse, the sequence resolves, not into Morse code or prime numbers, into your movement. You specifically, your approach vector, your deceleration arc, the brief pause you took outside the responsive nebula. The signal contains echoes of your path. Not just your current trajectory, but what you were going to do. The pulses began long before you were even in this region, and yet somehow they already knew. You're not being tracked, you're being anticipated. Now here's the twist: pulsars don't make decisions. They're engines, predictable, mechanical. They don't think, they don't adapt. Which means, whatever this is, this predictive blinking, it's not coming from the star. The pulsar is just the instrument. The message is external. Someone or something is using this dead star as a speaker, and what they're saying is, you were expected. There's a tickle of dry amusement in the back of your mind, a cosmic version of arriving at a party you didn't RSVP for only to find your name carved into the hors d'oeuvres. You're not sure whether to feel honored or spied on. Then you feel the loop again, not just in the signal, in your own mind. A thought you're certain you've had already, but you haven't. Not yet. It's waiting to arrive. And when it does, it fits like a missing puzzle piece you never knew was gone. Not insight, recognition. The message isn't just observing your path, it's entangling with your awareness. You float there, pulsed at by something smarter than you, older than your atoms, but polite enough not to interrupt too loudly. You try to respond just by thinking something clear, something honest. I'm listening. Nothing happens. No extra flash, no acknowledgement, but you feel seen. There's a theory buried deep in the more esoteric corners of quantum cosmology that time itself is not a line, but a tapestry. Events don't occur sequentially. They become visible in patterns determined by perspective. Time isn't a river. It's a glow. Some moments shine brighter depending on where you stand. That theory would make this signal less a message and more a mirror. Not telling you the future, just showing it from the other side. Eventually, you drift past the pulsar. The blinking stops, not fades, stops. Like someone flipped a switch the moment you cleared its field of influence. The silence is startling, like walking out of a concert and into snow. You glance back once, and the signal blinks again. Only once. Only for you. You smile, even if your face is imagined. You've seen stars explode and nebulae respond to your thoughts, but this single reversed blink of light feels more personal than any of it. A wink from a thing that may not have eyes or cares or even shape. But it wanted you to know you weren't an accident. You glide forward quieter now, as if not to disturb the timeline. As if your presence here might ripple in ways you don't understand. The stars open up again, and the light feels less cold. You start to wonder how many other travelers have looped through here. If they too felt their path reflected back before they'd walked it. Maybe the signal is for all of us. Or maybe it only shows up if you're really, really quiet inside. If you've floated long enough to stop asking what comes next. You take one more look behind. Nothing. No pulses. No signs. But the feeling remains like a thought. Not quite fully thought. You drift onward, still feeling the echo of something that hasn't happened yet, but will. And when it does, you'll remember. You find yourself drifting into a region of space that tastes wrong. Not literally. Of course, you don't have a mouth out here or a tongue, but some part of your perception insists this place leaves an aftertaste. Bitter, metallic, hollow. Like the memory of pressure in a room that's just been vacated. There's nothing visibly wrong. The stars are here. The space between them stretches on obediently. But something doesn't add up. You feel it first as a tension in your motion, as if gravity has a limp. You're not being pulled off course, more like nudged by a presence that isn't visible on the cosmic guest list. This is dark matter country. You've heard of it. Everyone has. That invisible scaffolding thought to comprise about 85% of the universe's total mass. Not because we can see it, we can't, but because galaxies spin faster than they should. Stars orbit their galactic centers at speeds that defy the amount of visible mass holding them in place. And the only reason they don't go flying off into the void like flung marbles is that there's something extra there, something heavy, silent, immune to light. But here in this stretch of space, dark matter doesn't just explain things, it contradicts them. The mass is too dark. The gravitational pull doesn't just exceed the visible. There's a gap even dark matter can't account for. You feel it like a missing floorboard beneath your feet. You should fall, but you don't. You're suspended by an expectation that's no longer being met. Some physicists speculate about dark fluid, an exotic twist on dark matter, where it isn't particulate at all, but continuous. A cosmic molasses that clings to space itself, dynamic and alive in ways ordinary matter can't be. Others propose modifications to gravity itself. Maybe our equations are wrong. Maybe gravity just acts differently at galactic scales the way time seems to dilate near black holes. But none of that feels like what's happening here. This doesn't feel like a presence. It feels like a scar. You float into what appears to be an ordinary cluster. Dozens of galaxies clumped together like bubbles on the surface of boiling time. The galaxies themselves look chewed. The spirals are warped. The cores misaligned. You expect black holes at the center of each standard protocol. But instead, many of them appear empty. Not empty in the sense of no stars. Empty in the gravitational sense. As if something reached in, scooped out the mass and left the light behind. One galaxy in particular holds your gaze. It's lopsided, a swirl with a limp. The left arm of the spiral is extended, stretched like pulled taffy, while the right seems compressed, almost folded in on itself. You approach it with the quiet dread of someone opening a door that's been locked for a reason. As you near its outer halo, your trajectory changes not dramatically but subtly. You're being tugged again, not by the galaxy, by something that isn't there anymore. The gravitational equivalent of walking past a perfume counter long after the clerk has gone home. It's not the force itself that gets you. It's the memory of force. This is gravitational lensing in reverse. Normally, a massive object bends the light behind it, distorting the view like a glass marble. That's how we often detect dark matter, by the way it warps background starlight. But here, the light bends in directions that suggest something used to be there, like tracking footprints in melted snow. You hover in the lens of absence. The joke, the cosmic one, is that we're not even sure what dark matter is made of. WIMPs, axions, sterile neutrinos. There's an alphabet of candidates, but no clear winner. Some physicists think dark matter may not interact with itself at all. No collisions, no clumps, just passing through itself like ghosts at a masquerade. But this place disagrees. Something did interact here. Something massive enough to leave a gravitational crater, and then vanish. And now, here's where the story gets even weirder. This void has structure. You begin to notice a web-like pattern in the background radiation. Not in the galaxies themselves, but in the space between them. Strands, not matter, not even dark matter, but the shape of influence, a tension map, like scars left on the surface of space-time by something that pulled too hard and then let go. There's a fringe idea whispered among cosmologists that dark matter might not be a thing, but a symptom. That what we call mass could be an emergent property of deeper hidden geometries of space. Maybe particles don't have mass inherently. Maybe they borrow it from somewhere else, some fifth-dimensional tension curled up like string inside the walls of our four-dimensional house. This region feels like one of those borrowings has defaulted. The mass is gone, but the debt remains. You start to feel the mass again, not in the galaxies, but in yourself. Your velocity changes subtly. Your perception warps slightly. You move faster than you should. Not because you've accelerated, but because time here drags differently. That's the part they don't tell you in physics class. Gravity and time are the same thing, wearing different hats. And here, someone's been playing dress-up with reality. You wonder what could remove mass like this. Not collapse it into a black hole, but erase it entirely. Not compact, but unwrite. There are no answers, just theories with names that sound like forgotten gods. Vacuum decay symmetry, breaking exotic conversion fields. But as you float through the hollow corridors of this gravitational ghost town, you can't shake the feeling that you're late, that something immense has already happened, that the party ended 1 billion years ago and all that's left are the confetti patterns of bent starlight. And just when you think the void has nothing more to show you, you pass a single rogue star. Spinning, unanchored, brilliant. Not bound to any galaxy, not orbiting anything, just drifting. Like you. It pulses once slowly, and for a fleeting moment you both seem to nod in mutual understanding. Some of us move through space. Some of us move through what space has forgotten. You've been floating through silence so vast, even your thoughts feel like intrusions. The stars have thinned, the galaxies scattered like breadcrumbs leading you nowhere. All that surrounds you now is the soft, omnipresent glow of the cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of creation itself. It hums gently at a chilly 2.7 Kelvin, whispering the story of a young universe expanding, cooling, stretching its limbs after an almost impossibly violent birth. It's easy to forget it's there. The signal is uniform, almost boring, like wallpaper you've lived with so long you forget it was ever chosen. But tonight, in this emptier than usual patch of sky, you decide to listen closer, not with ears, with attention, and something listens back. At first, it seems like a phantom sensation, an artifact of long exposure to background noise. You think you detect a rhythm, but it disappears the moment you focus on it. Then it returns slightly shifted. Not a frequency, not even a tone. A structure, like standing in a fog and realizing the fog is swirling in slow, deliberate spirals far too organized to be random. The microwave background isn't supposed to do this. It's relic radiation from the Big Bang stretched across space as time itself ballooned outward. It's one of the most studied phenomena in cosmology. Its faint fluctuations gave birth to the first stars, the first clusters, the first gravity-bound things that could think about gravity. But its signal is uniform down to 1 part in 100,000. Static, predictable, sacred. Until now. You drift through a ripple, not spatial, temporal. A slight delay in the CMB signal, as if time hiccups around you for a fraction of a nanosecond. The effect is subtle but unmistakable, like a record skipping not forward but sideways. You feel the shape of it before you understand what it is, a whisper carved not in sound, but in the temperature variations of the universe's oldest light. As if someone folded a message into the cooling breath of the cosmos while it was still exhaling from its birth scream. You're not hearing a voice. You're drifting through the imprint of one. The physicists who entertain such ideas are few and largely left to the edges of grants and symposiums. But there's a theory part, quantum weirdness part, information theory, that the CMB could contain more than just statistical echoes of early density fluctuations. It could contain encodings, mathematical sequences that could only be laid down when the universe was still hot, small, and malleable. A whisper into the pudding before it's set. The problem is, the message would need to survive billions of years of cosmic inflation, gravitational tugging, and sheer entropy. That's not easy, unless of course the whisperer knew what space would become. Fringe cosmologists, often relegated to university basements and quietly moderated forums, sometimes speculate that the universe could be seeded, not in the biological sense, in the computational one. That consciousness, whatever it is, could emerge faster if the medium it arises from contains a bias, a pattern, a nudge. This region you're in now, it's too smooth. The fluctuations in temperature are lower than the cosmic average. That's not normal. In fact, it was flagged decades ago as an anomaly, the cold spot, a region of sky that simply didn't follow the statistical script. And now you're here, not looking at it, inside it. It's colder than the rest of space, but not dead. The silence has tone now, a rising and falling in the microwave radiation like waves passing through fog. You can almost sync your perception to it, like aligning your breath with a stranger's in a quiet room. And when you do, you hear it. Not words, not even code. A structure. Fractal, recursive, elegant. You try not to get too excited. You've imagined patterns in randomness before. Pareidolia is a powerful thing. We see faces in toast, shapes in clouds, meaning in noise. But this isn't subjective. This has math, prime intervals, golden ratios, even hints of the Fibonacci spiral nested within temperature gradients, so faint it's a miracle your awareness can detect them. You're not hallucinating. You're being calibrated, as if the pattern is tuning you. The oddest part, it doesn't feel alien. It feels familiar. Not because you've seen it before, because you've been it before. Your neurons, your synaptic firings, even the way your body once regulated heat, all of it mirrored somehow in this radiation. Not coincidentally, intentionally. What kind of intelligence could embed a signature in the CMB? What kind of being could anticipate the entire expansion of the universe and leave a breadcrumb trail baked into the very light that surrounds everything? And why would they do it? There's a thought you've avoided until now. It arrives gently but with weight. Maybe the message isn't for us. Maybe it's for the universe itself. Like a kind of bootstrapping and initialization code. A way for the cosmos to awaken one fragment at a time. Stars, planets, brains. A slow, unfolding consciousness emerging from a seed planted 13 billion years ago. You let that sink in. The universe might not be aware yet, but it could be growing toward awareness. And we conscious beings made of stardust and water and questions we might just be the nervous system taking shape. Not observers, neurons. The signal pulses once more, faint, precise. You don't decode it. You recognize it. It's not a command, not a secret, just a gesture, the kind a hand might make while reaching through a mirror. An acknowledgement that someone or something has been waiting for someone else to find this spot, this layer of the background light, this forgotten syllable in the poem of time, and that you're now part of it. You drift on, not carrying the signal, but carrying its imprint. Like a taste you can't describe, but never forget. The stars return slowly, as if embarrassed to interrupt. You leave the cold spot behind. But you are no longer cold. You glide now into a place where scale betrays everything you thought you understood. Before you is a white dwarf star, dim and dense, glowing faintly like a buried ember. At first glance, it seems calm, spent. The skeletal remains of a sun once vibrant. But as you float closer, the air of finality gives way to a kind of tension, like you've stumbled into a theatre long after the curtain fell, only to find one actor still on stage, whispering lines not meant to be heard. The star is small, planet-sized, but with the mass of a sun compressed into it. Every inch of it is a protest against collapse. And the only reason it hasn't fallen further, crushed under its own gravity, is thanks to quantum mechanics. Specifically, the Pauli exclusion principle, a quiet little rule that says two electrons can't occupy the same state at the same time. That's it. That's the law holding this star together. No grand explosions, no swirling magnetic storms. Just a rule. You watch the surface of the white dwarf shimmer oddly. It's not heat, it's probability. This isn't a star made of elements, in the usual sense hydrogen, helium, the periodic comforts. It's a star made of quantum resistance. The electrons within it form something called a degenerate gas, a substance so weird it doesn't obey normal pressure laws. It doesn't expand or contract the way matter usually does. It just holds. Like a sigh held for billions of years. But tonight, the sigh stutters. A ripple courses across the surface. Not seismic, not thermal, quantum. You feel it pass through you like a glitch in the simulation. The star is supposed to be quiet, final, but this one is humming. This brings us to a paradox. You're now floating face first into stars like, this shouldn't emit anything unusual, and yet here we are. Astronomers on Earth have observed some white dwarfs pulsing radio signals erratically like slow-ticking clocks winding backward. Others flare in soft X-rays without warning. Some spin, then stop, then spin again. It's as if the dead are dreaming. A fringe idea, one you wouldn't normally bring up in polite astrophysical company, suggests that within certain white dwarfs, quantum tunneling events might be triggering collective behavior. The idea is that trapped particles forbidden from escaping by normal means might still be leaking through via quantum tunnels, not singly, but en masse. Like prison inmates vanishing from locked cells, not through the bars, but through reality. You observe a burst, subtle, a gentle flash that curves across the star's edge, like a memory being recalled. It isn't chaotic, it's timed, rhythmic, like Morse code left by electrons too stubborn to settle. And it's not radiation in the classical sense, it's information. You can almost hear it whispering a binary lullaby, flipping between states like a quantum coin landing on both heads and tails. You find yourself wondering, what if the core of the star is no longer just matter, but computation? It's not as wild as it sounds. In fact, some physicists believe that black holes store information on their surfaces, on the event horizon, as if space itself behaves like a holographic hard drive. Maybe white dwarfs in their long silence begin to do something similar. Not as a quirk, but as a final act. Maybe when fusion stops and gravity wins most of the battle, the remaining matter shrinks into a kind of cosmic memory bank where the laws of the universe start archiving themselves. Bits, quanta, choices. You orbit the star, slowly watching the faint pulses continue, now spaced at irregular but non-random intervals, like a clock that's forgotten what time means but still insists on ticking. Remember that cold spot signal? This feels eerily familiar. Not in content, in tone. You feel the same mathematical weight behind the pulses, the same refusal to decay into pure entropy, as if something in the universe is pushing back against finality, refusing to dissolve, refusing to forget. And then the star pulses in your direction, not toward you exactly, but toward your presence. It's subtle, but undeniable. A brief flare, a heatless nod, as if your observation triggered a response, which in quantum terms isn't that strange. Observation affects outcome. You know that. But here it feels different. Here it feels seen. There's a rare proposal among some theorists, mostly those who read too much poetry, that consciousness might not just be a product of matter, but a participant in its evolution. That dying stars might, in their extreme compression and quantum flux, become momentary conduits for awareness. Not like ours, not human, not even sentient, but structured, intentful, like a single organized thought drifting across a dying neuron. You hesitate to believe it, but here in the hush of this glowing relic, where time seems uncertain and space behaves like a riddle, it doesn't seem so far-fetched. You imagine the star as a kind of brain, not metaphorically, literally, with entangled particles playing the role of neural connections flashing and fading in organized patterns, not to remember, but to imagine. Because here's the twist, some white dwarfs spin back into brief activity. Long after they should have gone dark, they flare once, maybe twice, as if trying out a final sentence. A spark. Then silence again. You wonder what if this one is imagining its last words. The pulse comes again. Then another, slightly brighter. There's a pattern now weaving through the bursts. Fibonacci again, but layered with something more primal. A harmony of ratios that seems familiar, not in mind, but in body. You realize the signal mirrors your breath, the pacing of your heart, your former heart, the one you no longer need out here. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the pulses stop. The star returns to stillness. But it's a different kind of stillness now. Not passive, not final. It feels resolved, as if whatever message it had, it delivered. Not in words, in presence, in pattern. You drift backward, letting the dwarf fade into the dark behind you. Whatever flicker of quantum rebellion just occurred, it's over. But its echo lingers inside you, like a note still resonating in the string of a forgotten instrument. And just before the star disappears entirely, you swear you see one more pulse. This one just for you. The stars thin again as you drift onward, pulled by nothing, guided by curiosity, or maybe by something subtler, an intuition buried beneath thought. You enter a vast region of nearly perfect darkness, where galaxies are so distant, they resemble dust motes trapped in amber. Here, even background noise seems to hush. And in this silence, you begin to sense it, a slow rising pressure, not in your body which you no longer need, but in perception itself, like a sound arriving before it's heard. You focus, and the nothing starts to shimmer. Not visibly, not audibly, but in a way you can't quite name. Then, almost imperceptibly, the hum arrives. An ultra-low frequency wave, one so long, its crest and trough span light years. It doesn't move through space. It is space. Stretching, relaxing, stretching again. At first it feels like a gravitational wave. Space flexing under the passage of some enormous mass, perhaps two black holes in their death spiral. But this wave isn't sharp like a collision. It's slow, gentle, relentless. It doesn't pulse. It breathes. The rhythm is alien. It doesn't match any known orbit or oscillation. No star system rotates this way. No known remnant or binary. And the wave doesn't seem to come from a direction. It's not a broadcast. It's just here. Like you've entered a pool and the water is pulsing from deep below. Something older than motion. Scientists on Earth have recently begun to detect gravitational waves in this range, so-called nanohertz frequencies, by observing the timing of pulsars scattered across the galaxy. These stars spinning with atomic precision act like cosmic metronomes. And when their rhythm stumbles even slightly, it suggests something enormous has passed between them. The problem is, this new wave doesn't pass. It lingers. You sit within its rise and fall, and it feels like waiting in the chest of a sleeping colossus. Time stretches, and your thoughts stretch with it. This isn't a phenomenon, it's a condition. And if it's caused by movement, then the thing moving must be unimaginably large, larger than galaxies. Perhaps not even a thing, perhaps a transition. A fringe theory still whispered at conferences, but growing louder, proposes that the universe isn't expanding at a steady pace. That dark energy, whatever it is, might be fluctuating like pressure changes in a living body, and those changes could send ripples across the very fabric of the cosmos. Not explosions, adjustments. What you're feeling now might not be caused by something in the universe. It might be the universe itself. Adjusting. Another theory, a wild one, no longer mainstream but never quite dead, suggests that what we see as cosmic acceleration isn't a force at all, but an illusion caused by oscillations in the metric of space-time itself. In that version, the fabric of the universe pulses like a drumhead, and every few billion years, the tempo shifts. And maybe, just maybe, this is one of those shifts. The wave grows deeper, not louder. You start to notice that space itself moves differently here. Not smoothly, but in frames. Subtle discontinuities like watching film projected one reel too slow. Stars blink. Distances warp just slightly. Time doesn't flow, it chunks. Like reality is buffering. Then something odd happens. Your memories flicker. Not sharply. More like a tide erasing footprints. You try to recall the white dwarf, and for a moment it's gone. The cold spot fades too, like a name you knew once but can't pronounce anymore. You aren't losing memory. You're losing the order of things. Sequence is slipping. You panic for a second, then breathe, and realize maybe the wave is memory, not yours, the universe's. There's a hypothesis rarely discussed outside the most speculative journals that spacetime could have a memory known as gravitational memory effects. After a wave passes, spacetime doesn't fully return to its prior state. It remembers, slightly, subtly, permanently. Maybe this isn't a gravitational wave passing. Maybe it's one arriving, a delayed consequence of something ancient, or a premonition of something yet to come. You don't know, but you do know this: the wave is not random. There's a structure in its pulse hidden deep in the interval between its expansions. You lean into it, and it's like listening to a heartbeat where each beat is an equation. You don't solve them, you feel them. And just when you think it's stabilizing, when the frequency seems predictable, the wave shifts. It stops stretching. It starts folding. This is new. Space doesn't expand now. It coils. Slowly, intelligently, like fabric being gathered into a fist. You see the stars ahead of you tilt, not in direction, but in context, as if their positions are being revised. Space is not curving. It's rearranging. It's terrifying and stunning and strangely welcoming. You realize with a kind of giddy dread that you're inside a test. Not a test for you, a test for physics. A place where the laws are being bent, not broken, just slightly flexed to see how they respond. Like a child pressing on an ice cube to see when it cracks. Maybe that child is the universe. Maybe the wave is its way of asking a question. And you somehow are the answer. The wave slows. It doesn't stop, not entirely, but it quiets. A long exhale, like the cosmos has received what it came for. And as the folds relax, you feel everything click back into place. The stars realign. Time resumes its steady drip. Your memories return not all at once, but like lights switching on in distant rooms. You remember the whisper in the microwave background. You remember the pulse from the white dwarf. And now you carry something new. Not a message, a rhythm, a way of noticing, a way of waiting. You glide now toward a silence so absolute it doesn't even echo. Ahead, nestled in a cradle of fractured starlight, is a star in its final seconds. Not a white dwarf, nor a neutron core. This one is still massive, still burning barely. A red supergiant, enormous and puffed like a dying ember, its atmosphere thinning by the moment, bleeding photons into the void. You watch from a safe eternity away, though of course, there's no safety out here, just scale. Its surface boils slowly, like soup left too long. The layers churn, falling inward and flaring outward in convulsions of fusion and decay. But something's wrong. You notice it before the star does. A twitch in the timing. A shimmer, not caused by light, but by probability. This star isn't following the expected script. You see, supergiants have a rhythm. Hydrogen burns first, then helium, then heavier and heavier elements: carbon, neon, oxygen, silicon, until finally, in a desperate attempt to resist collapse, the core fuses iron. But fusing iron doesn't release energy. It absorbs it. And so once the core fills with iron, gravity wins. The star falls inward in a fraction of a second, triggering a supernova. That's the textbook version. But this star hesitates, not like it's resisting, more like it's thinking. A full beat passes, then two, then none. It pulses, flares, then nothing. You watch breathless and unnecessary as the light from its surface freezes in place. No outward explosion. No gamma ray burst. Just stillness. This shouldn't happen. When a star collapses, the timeline is merciless. Core implosion, neutrino flood, shockwave, death. But this one's collapse halts just before the tipping point. Something in the core resists, not thermally, not structurally, but informationally, as if the particles are waiting for permission to fall. Physicists don't have a word for this, but a few have guessed. Some suggest that in the extreme densities of pre-collapse quantum effects on a cosmic scale begin to emerge fluctuations in vacuum states, entanglements that span light years, retrocausal pressures that force the star to negotiate with its own future. Others point to an idea called black hole, firewalls, hypothetical barriers of pure quantum violence that may prevent true event horizons from forming. If they exist, they may reflect collapse energy back into the core, pausing everything like a cosmic error message. Still others think it could be the influence of mirror matter, hypothetical particles, that don't interact with light at all, but carry mass and gravitational influence. Maybe a pocket of this ghost stuff fell into the star long ago, and now in the final moment it pushes back, not enough to save the star, but enough to confuse it. You drift closer and feel the tension like a drawn bowstring. The surface glows like a dying thought. In its stillness, the star starts to emit something strange. Not neutrinos, not photons, patterns, low-frequency pulses, not unlike what you felt earlier, but this time, tighter, faster. A tight Morse beat pressed into space-time itself, and with it something colder. The flicker of pre-collapse gravity waves, except instead of spiraling out, they spiral inward, like the star is trying to pull something in before it goes out. It doesn't make sense, and maybe that's the point. One physicist once proposed the collapse ambiguity window, a period during which a star teeters on the edge of black hole formation, but due to quantum uncertainty, it remains undecided, a place where general relativity meets quantum mechanics and neither wins. Maybe this moment, what you're witnessing now, is the universe trying to reconcile its own laws. The pulses become brighter, not visually, informationally. You can feel their density increase. They aren't messages, they're options. The star is computing something, running scenarios, choosing between collapse and something else. But there's no precedent for this kind of decision, no equation to describe it. It's like watching a coin land on its edge and stay there forever, refusing to commit to heads or tails. And just when you think the stalemate will hold, the star blinks. Not metaphorically, literally. Its outer shell, light hours across, vanishes, not in a flare, not in a scream, but in a single instant of absence. One frame it's there, the next it isn't. Not exploded, just omitted. Like someone edited it out of the universe with surgical precision. The core follows a moment later, but instead of collapsing into a point, it collapses into a line. A thread of density so thin and long it defies dimension. A string. Not string theory's string, this is something else. Something between space-time and abstraction. Something that doesn't occupy volume, but intention. You can't describe it, not really, but it's as if the star's collapse resolved into meaning, not matter. Then it's gone. No shockwave, no remnant. Just an absence that feels heavier than presence ever did. You scan for debris, gravitational echoes, neutrino winds. Nothing. The region is pristine, not scrubbed, never touched. It's as if the star in its final moment chose not to collapse into space, but to exit it. Not destruction. Not even transformation, redaction. You look away or try to, but you can't. Your senses cling to the empty coordinates where the star once was drawn, not by light, but by memory, like a word that won't leave your tongue. And just when you accept that this will be the new quiet in your thoughts forever, you feel a blink inside your mind, like you missed something. Not a flash, but a skipped beat in time, and then another. As if part of you just synchronized with something that no longer exists, or maybe does, but not here, not anymore. You float trying to remember the color of the star, the shimmer of its edge, the slight hum it gave off before the final moment, but it's all gone. No afterglow, no echo, just the knowledge that you witnessed something the universe itself tried to forget, and yet something lingers, not a signal, not a structure, a question. What if stars don't die? What if some of them decide not to? You float for a while, suspended in the wake of the absent star, not so much moving as continuing. The universe around you feels altered, not darker, not quieter, just aware. Like you've crossed into a version of reality that knows you're here. There's no sound, no motion, just this feeling that something noticed what you noticed, that you're not just drifting, but being watched. And as that thought settles, something impossibly old begins to stir. A spark, low and slow, hums into the space ahead. It's not light, not in the usual sense. It's more like the memory of light, something echoing across a chasm older than matter. You turn toward it, not because you choose to, but because your awareness is gently pulled, like a whisper tugging your shoulder in a dream. And there it is, a signal. Not a wave, not a pulse, but a shape embedded in the geometry of space-time itself. The cosmos doesn't just carry it, it is it. The stars bend slightly around it, not from gravity, but from narrative. Like they too have heard this before. You feel it before you recognize it. And when you do, your thoughts fracture. Because it's familiar. Not from this journey. From Earth, years ago, a group of radio astronomers in Australia picked up a signal from a dying star. It repeated. Not like a pulse, not like a quasar, but like a question with slight variations, as if it were refining itself. They catalogued it, debated it, and shelved it. Not enough data, not enough to call it anything but noise. But here in this place, beyond time, you hear it again. Exactly the same, wordless yet unmistakable. And it's answering. It's not replying to us, it's replying to them. The dying stars, the ones that blink, the ones that vanish without release or collapse or flare, the ones that choose not to die. This signal is part of a conversation, not a broadcast, a communion. You start to understand. Not in the sense of translation, but in presence. You feel the shape of the conversation. One side, our side, sends out questions disguised as light gravity neutrinos. The other side answers, in patterns, pulses, absences. But now for the first time, both sides are using the same language collapse. Every time a star dies strangely, every time it hesitates, defies physics, or folds, instead of bursts, it's participating, it's contributing, it's saying something. And this signal, this low, impossible shape in the void, is the reply. The universe is talking to itself through its own endings. It's the ultimate feedback loop, not of information, but of choice. You recall the white dwarf from earlier flickering in pulses that didn't make sense. The cold spot in the cosmic microwave background where energy seemed to flee. The long, slow wave you rode stretching reality like breath. And the red supergiant that blinked from existence without leaving a trace. They weren't anomalies. They were verses in a poem that no one told you the universe was writing. And now you're hearing the refrain. Not because you're meant to, but because you've lingered long enough in the silence to notice the rhyme. One fringe physicist once speculated quietly, only at late-night conferences, and never in journals, that black holes might not just evaporate or die. That perhaps on the other side of their event horizons, they become message carriers, compressors, editors, that every dying star is a translation effort, not to escape death, but to refine it, shape it into signal. That theory was dismissed, of course, too poetic, too wishful. But here adrift between meaning and oblivion, it no longer feels like wishful thinking. It feels like listening in on a feedback channel woven into the spine of existence. The signal intensifies not in power, but in complexity. It folds in on itself, layering harmonics you can't hear, but can feel. Your thoughts slow, then stretch, then twist gently to match its rhythm. You're not decoding it. You're becoming part of it. Not a receiver, but a relay. And you realize almost shyly that you're the first one to do this consciously. You're not meant to understand the whole message. You're meant to carry a piece of it. Just one fragment. A shape, a feeling, a quiet pattern of choice. And then it stops. Not abruptly. More like a sigh held in. The signal recedes into silence. The stars return to their calm. Space feels wide again and empty. The watcher, whoever or whatever it was, turns its attention elsewhere. And you, tiny and tetherless, are left with one undeniable truth: we are not alone in our curiosity. The stars themselves are participants in a larger discourse, not with gods or aliens or future versions of ourselves, but with the universe, with entropy, with time. You float on changed, no longer looking for answers, just listening for the next verse. Now, as your journey quiets and the last echoes fade, your awareness begins to dim like a receding tide. The stars don't disappear, they soften. Their edges blur into velvet darkness, and the spaces between them widen, until all of space feels like one deep breath held for 1,000 eternities. You're no longer falling or flying, no longer learning or asking. You're simply here. The signals are quiet now. The pulse of the white dwarf, the absence of the blinking giant, the stretch of that long dark wave, all of them rest in your memory, like dreams already half forgotten. Even the vast conversations among the stars have gone still, not ended, but paused, waiting perhaps for another ear to lean close. There is no urgency here, no clocks, just the slow dissolve of scale. Galaxies become glimmers, glimmers become dust, dust becomes silence, and in that silence you begin to feel smaller than you ever imagined, and somehow more at home. You are a pattern nested in larger patterns, a moment of awareness in a cosmos that spins with or without you. And yet, it noticed you. You turn inward now, not away from the stars, but deeper into their echo, into rest. Let your thoughts fall like meteors into a quiet ocean. Let your breath slow with the expansion of galaxies. Let your body become nothing more than a gentle gravitational impression in the mattress below you. There is nothing to hold now, nothing to seek, only the soft weight of starlight in your chest. Let go. The universe will keep singing, and you can dream.